conducting himself like a knucklehead on a couple of occasions.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Welcome back to the Chase Brewster Show. I am your host, Chase Brewster. Today I have a very special guest, someone who I have been lucky enough to consider a friend and form a relationship with over the last year or two. Someone who I know is making the state better and really cares about the state. And also someone who I'm excited to interview because he has a very interesting perspective, both recruiting with the Arkansas Razorbacks women's basketball team, getting to recruit the state, and having a son who is committed to play for the University of Arkansas Razorbacks baseball team, Coach Todd Schaefer. How are you, Coach?
I'm great, Chase. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate you coming on. I know you guys got a lot going on right now. Obviously, the basketball season is kind of in a weird spot. It's not fall, it's not spring. It's right there in the middle of everything, and there's chaos every day on the front end and the back end. So I know you got a lot going on today. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Looking forward to it.
Take me through a normal day for you, Coach. I know, as it just turns September, you start playing, it'll feel like tomorrow, I'm sure, for you. But with the way the schedule is and the way y'all season runs, take me through what a normal day is like for you right now.
Yeah, right now, we're in what the NCAA kind of classifies as an 8-hour week. So our players are permitted 4 hours on the court with us and then 4 hours like in the weight room doing weights and conditioning. So, our kids go to class, obviously, in the morning, may do some workouts here and there before class. But, we'll work out on the court Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then in the weight room, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they'll do kind of old school conditioning, so to speak, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They'll have the weekends off. So from a basketball standpoint, we're kind of in that mode of still limited until September the 26th. On September the 26th, which will be 42 days from our first game, we can then start, kind of in-season team practices where we move to the 20-hour window to where we can, have more full-fledged, kind of team practices. So that's right around the corner, a week from Monday. And at this time of the year, players are counting down the days to September the 26th when preseason ends. And then, we get into preparation for that first game, which I believe is November 6th, that Monday. I think it's the 6th. So, so that's kind of what we're doing now. A lot of player, individual skill development type stuff, trying to get them ready more individually before we turn the focus more towards the team on September 26th.
Players and coaches both, I'm sure, are counting down the days. I know it'll be a good day for everybody.
Yes. We're kind of itching to get into more of that, team mode and start building, our team, for what it's going to look like early on in the season. So, everybody is anticipating that window where we can kind of move into that phase of preparation.
So speaking of team, obviously, coming off another great year, and I know you guys have done a lot of, just great things at the university. If you want to talk about the season and the team, I know it'll be, right around the corner like we talked about. So surely you've seen some things, some things that we're all not privy to, if you want to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're looking forward to it. We're excited about our roster. We have a number of returning players from last year's team. We only have one senior. This year, we took one player out of the transfer portal. Chrissy Carr came to us from Syracuse via Kansas State. She'll have 1 year of eligibility left. She'll be our only player that doesn't have any eligibility left after this year. So, we're excited. The fact we've got basically our same team, not only this year, but then moving forward to next year. But we add another couple players that sat out for us last year. Miriam Dowda is a kid from Bentonville High School that originally signed with Baylor. And when Coach Mulkey made the change from Baylor to LSU, Miriam decided not to follow her to LSU, and she decided to come to Arkansas at that point. But she sat out last year rehabbing a knee injury. Miriam's a 6'5" post player, very skilled, very athletic. Looking forward to having Miriam. And then Sailor Poffenbarger played at UConn and transferred to us at Christmas last year. So she sat out the remainder of last year, practiced with us. So we're looking forward to having Sailor this year on the court. And then we have one freshman in Carly Johnson, a freshman from Oklahoma. So those kind of our new players. And then, we have a lot of returning guys that played a lot of minutes last year. Michaela Daniels, Aaron Barnum, Samara Spencer, who's the reigning SEC Freshman of the Year. Interesting story on Samara. People talk in your world of baseball, just like our world, about rankings. And, a lot of people get consumed about that. And, Sam wasn't in anybody's top 100 in the country, which in basketball, like kind of that 100 mark is, I guess, the mark of, you've either made it or haven't made it ranking wise. And Sam was a kid out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that played for friends of ours with the Miami Suns organization. And she wasn't on anybody's ranking, radar. And we signed her, and then she just had a terrific freshman year. So all these McDonald's All-Americans that were in the SEC last year, either didn't get the opportunity to play enough minutes or they didn't play well enough. And Sam was the Freshman of the Year in the SEC, which is an incredible accomplishment. Tell people all the time, nobody cares about your ranking when you get to be a freshman in college. And Sam's a perfect example of why that's true.
Well, some of that's probably a testament to you guys' development as well. I mean, that she had development that maybe other programs didn't in the SEC.
Well, we do pride ourselves in that, Chase, for sure. And we do keep a focus on the individual player development all year long, even when we do move into the team phase. But and some of it was opportunity. Sam came in and earned a lot of minutes, and sometimes those awards are earned with kids that have. But that was because she earned it and played really well, and it obviously did get better throughout the year. And she hit a freshman wall. But then, unlike most freshmen, she knocked down the wall and saw the other side. A lot of kids, they play really well their freshman year until they hit that wall, and then, they don't see good play again until they're sophomores. But the thing that made Sam special last year was she was able to knock down that wall and, kind of come through on the other side last year. So was exciting for her. And Michaela Daniels has started every game at point guard since she's been here. She'll be a fourth-year player, but has a COVID year left, so is probably going to come back again next year. So we'll be a senior, kind of, but not really. It's a weird deal, this whole COVID thing. It's just confusing to everybody. But looking forward to obviously having her, back. Jersey Wolfenbarger, McDonald's All-American kid from Fort Smith Northside, had a really good freshman year for us last year. Looking forward to her improvement and having a big sophomore year for her. Emory Ellis, kid from Oklahoma, until she got injured last year, was getting some quality minutes at the post spot for us. So we have a lot of younger players, Chase, but a lot of those younger players got a tremendous amount of experience and minutes last year. So even though a lot of them are going to be sophomores and juniors and, in redshirt freshman type people, they come to us with some experience. So definitely looking forward to, what this team, can possibly do. Riley Langerman's a kid that our fans just love. She's the player that we have that has alopecia and so has no hair and just tough as nails, plays really hard, fan favorite. She's worked extremely hard developing her offensive skill set, this summer. So I think our fans and our team will benefit, from Riley's hard work as well.
Sure. And the thing that's so intriguing to me about women's athletics and especially basketball is you get them for so long. Like, I'm sure there's rare situations, but they don't declare early. They don't,
right.
So in basketball and even softball, I mean, you can really look 4 years ahead and think, and which I'm sure on the recruiting end makes it easier because kind of outside of a transfer, you know what you have. But it as a guy who loves coaching, it's kind of exciting to know like you're building this puzzle and these pieces aren't going to randomly get drafted or go junior college to get drafted like a lot of baseball players. So that's pretty exciting, I think, to know kind of what's going on years down the road.
No question. And we have a player that fits that mode. Aaron Barnum is a kid from Little Rock Central who we actually had to count how many years she's been here because she redshirted as a freshman, came in here, worked, changed her body, and developed her skill set, played a lot for us, was playing awesome last year until she ran into a knee injury that, really derailed her season. But, she's been here so long. You've seen the development on her physically, mentally, emotionally, the whole 9 yards, her skill set. now she's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, but she's been here 4 years already. So it's kind of crazy how some of that stuff, to your point, in women's basketball, you don't get a lot of players who leave early for the WNBA. You might get one every 2 years nationally. So it's the exception to the rule. And it is nice that you can have a plan for these players and say, hey, look, okay, this is our plan. This is the blueprint, to use our terminology. This is the blueprint that we're going to use, to develop you and to get you to be the very best player that you can be, so that we can help you accomplish the dreams that you have as a player. And then obviously it helps our team in the meantime, and it is unique to women's basketball, obviously, with the men and the one and done, and in baseball, in the 2-year window, the 3-year window, the JUCO window. Things are very much different. But certainly, and I think that's why people like women's basketball too, is if you're a fan of women's basketball and you come to games, you're going to see the same kid for 4 years.
For sure.
You're going to get to know that kid. It's a unique situation, not only for us development wise as coaches, but certainly for a fan base that, they're going to be able to really identify with our players, because they're going to honestly get to know them because they're going to be here long enough.
For sure.
So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And I think it's better on the players as well, because, it's so – the one thing about having 40 new kids a year, like on the baseball program, and not 40 new, but let's say, 15 to 20 new of the 40, there's so much uncertainty and everybody's got to prove if they're the alpha and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those outside of, 3 or 4 girls a year, I don't know y'all's roster exactly on the numbers, but I would say there's obviously leadership at the top, and there's roles kind of niche probably before people get there, I'm assuming, because everybody knows kind of what's going on.
There's certainly that level of comfort that comes with having some guys that have been around that are older, kind of know what's going on, kind of know the system, able to mentor the younger players that do come. And you're right, it depending on the year, it'd be 3 to 5 new players, just kind of depending on the recruiting class and the transfer portal and how many you lose and just things of that nature. But we've been fortunate that although we certainly have players that have left for the portal, we've been able to keep the nucleus of our team together, kind of during this, what we call this portal era.
For sure.
We've been fortunate enough to have that happen. So it is beneficial for the players to have the mentorship and the experience, to have older players be able to kind of show them the ropes, so to speak. And so that it is. There's no question our players benefit from that.
Well, we're definitely hoping you guys have another great year and have a lot of success. I know the whole state is excited. And right now is a great time to work at the University of Arkansas. I mean, every athletic program is successful. Football's, just 10th in the nation this week. And, obviously, Coach Van Horn, those guys have things rolling, and Coach Musselman is the man. So speak about that kind of. It's a very unique situation. It may be the best university to work for right now, top to bottom. It's
surreal living it every day and being in this, community of athletics up here. It's with these incredible coaches who are just fantastic people. And the one thing I really enjoy about our coaching staff, just as a department, is their willingness to open up their programs, share. We let each other come watch practice. We share our recruits with one another. We sell each other. Colby Hale's a great friend of our program, the women's soccer coach who has a phenomenal program. He probably walks every recruit he's got into our facility, and we get a chance to kind of brag on them. And, we do the same thing with Courtney Deifel or really anybody. But it's truly an amazing time. You have so many good players and so many good coaches. And, Hunter Yurachek, our leader, is just a phenomenal person to work for. He gets it. His leadership is phenomenal. His leadership team underneath him is just, it's really a cool experience. And I've worked at some different places, and it hasn't always been like this. And even when there's success, there's things that these guys get it. And, and it's fun. And I literally, you mentioned softball. So our facility is right next to softball. And I'll literally finish up a run, have a coffee. I'll go out and watch softball practice. You talk about a staff that gets it.
For sure.
Courtney and her staff are phenomenal. You watch them practice. There's stuff that even a basketball coach can pick up on about the tempo they run their practices at, the way they divide their team, and the things that they got going on. They're maximizing their time, their space. It's it's really a neat deal, and that's across the board. I mean, it is. It's a fun time. You bring recruits in. You can take them to a baseball game, a basketball game. I mean, volleyball's off the charts. Gymnastics draws like unbelievable fan attendance up here. Friday night gymnastics is like a cool environment. So anybody that's listening that's never been to something like that, volleyball's having, the best start to a year they've had in some time. And so it is. To your point, it's a neat time to be a part of Razorback athletics, whether you're a player, a coach, a staff member, a fan. It's a neat time, and we're just trying to do our part.
Well, and like obviously I know some of the coaches better than others, and some I don't know at all, but just from afar, it looks like there's a lot of pride in the other sports. I mean, I know as busy as you guys are, I mean, you can see, especially some of the head coaches take, time out to go to other events and to, to really support each other. And obviously Fayetteville is a phenomenal place to live in, and there's a lot of pride in each athletic program. So from afar, it's really, as I get to deal with different coaches in different schools or whatever, it's hard not to root for Arkansas, because I know a lot of the coaches personally now, but also because there's a joy of watching other people succeed. And I think that's rare in a lot of cases.
No, there's no question that it's rare, but I do think that there amongst us coaches and even the head coaches, there's an appreciation for what each other's doing, because we all know how hard it is in our own sport. And it's like, Coach Neighbors talks all the time, like, the pressure to win is the pressure. Like, can you imagine sitting around a head coaches meeting at the University of Arkansas right now, and you look to your right and your left, and, you've got Lance Harder and Chris Buckman in track, and then you've got Courtney over there, and you've got Dave, and you've got Coach Pittman, and you got Muss. Like, could you just imagine sitting around that room and like, you're going, holy cow, like, you got to work really hard just to keep up with the people that are in the room. But each one of those coaches and their staffs knows how difficult it is in their own sport, which just leads to your point of the appreciation that we all have for one another in the time that we have, where, like, right now, man, things are good right now.
Sure. Well, it's always good right now in the fall for the games start, when the games are going good.
Yeah.
Great. But, so I know schedule is a big thing for you. I know you love schedule. I know you guys have had a big kind of non-conference schedule in the past and done some things, went to New York, I know. So, you want to talk about the non-conference schedule?
Yeah.
Just maybe a little bit about the season and the expectations.
Mm-hmm. We had another great schedule we put together, another challenging one. I'll start by, we're coming back to Little Rock, for our fans down in kind of y'all's neck of the woods down there in South and Central Arkansas. We come to play UALR. We come to play Little Rock. Again, it's on a Sunday afternoon, right before Thanksgiving, the Sunday before Thanksgiving, I believe. I think it's the 20th, if I'm not mistaken. So Coach Foley's going to retire, I think, at the end of this year. So, it looks like from that standpoint, so being able to play them down there in Little Rock, we always try to get to Little Rock once a year to try to give our fans down there a chance to, watch us play without having to travel all the way up here. We'll play all of our in-state schools, and probably the coolest thing that Coach Neighbors and our administration did this year, Chase, is we're going to open the season against Arkansas Pine Bluff at Arkansas Pine Bluff. We're going to be the first University of Arkansas athletic team to play a game at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. So Monday night, November the 6th, I believe. We're going to go down there and open up, at Pine Bluff. And we're looking forward to taking our team down, to there. We've played them in the past here, but it's going to be a neat deal and a neat way to open up the season. And we're looking forward. Dawn does a great job with her program down there. They've got some talent. They got a transfer from Tennessee. They got a transfer from Georgia. They got a really good player from New Mexico. Like, she's got a good roster.
For sure.
So it's going to be a great game. And then we have some cool trips. We're going to go to what's called the Paradise Jam, which in women's basketball, Chase, is kind of the equivalent of the Maui Invitational, which actually our men are going to. So the Paradise Jam is in the Virgin Islands over Thanksgiving. So we got invited to that. So we're going to play 3 games down there. We'll play Northern Arizona, we'll play Clemson, and we'll play Kansas State, who's a perennial top 25 team. So that's a neat trip, for us to do. And then we're also going to take our team to San Diego to play in a tournament right before Christmas. And we're going to open that tournament against Oregon. And then we're going to play the winner or loser, depending on how depending on how the games go, we're going to play either South Florida or Ohio State. So we have a return game to Creighton, who was made a run in the tournament. We played them last year here. They beat us here last year, and they made a run, in the NCAA tournament last year. We have to go to Creighton. So just again, have games again with UCA, Arkansas State, both here. So that kind of highlights, a little bit of our schedule, but certainly playing the in-state schools. The game at Little Rock, the game at Pine Bluff. And then the two big trips, going to San Diego and then the Virgin Islands to the Paradise Jam. So
you talked about tournaments. I've always wondered in basketball. Obviously, in baseball, it's so different because of pitching. You strategically, the big things center around pitching. But when you have these tournaments, obviously the non-conference tournaments are less weight on the line. But an NCAA tournament, how hard is it, scouting-wise, or just setting up things? And you're playing, if not the next day and some non-conference stuff, or 2 or 3 days later, how much pressure is it on as a staff to turn it over to make sure everybody's prepared?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting deal because, we go most of the season where you're like in our SEC games, we play Thursdays and Sundays, so there's time. But like the Paradise Jam where you're playing 3 games in 3 days, I mean, you're preparing ahead of time for those games. You're taking video with you. Same thing in San Diego, but then you get to the SEC tournament. So you get to the SEC tournament and you're kind of playing repeat opponents because we play everybody in our league at least once.
For sure.
But you're going to play say Thursday, Friday, Saturday, depending on when you win and lose. And those can be really quick turnarounds. There's a lot of stuff that's done in the hotel. You don't have a lot of practice time for those games. And then you have this. So in women's basketball, Chase, the SEC tournament will end on a Sunday, and then you have an entire week until the selection show. So you go from even if you play in the SEC championship game like we did a few years ago, and you play that game on Sunday, the selection show's not till the following Sunday night. So you have this week, to where you're kind of trying to rest, recover, stay sharp, but you have no idea who your next opponent's going to be. So it's we sit around the office and do our own bracketology, and you're pulling film, and then all of a sudden, boom, the selection show comes, and now an opponent. And you may have to turn around and leave on Tuesday or Wednesday. So then it happens really quick, and you're in a little pod, and you have this team first. But then if you win, you're going to have 1 or 2. So there's a lot of early preparation. I call it pre-preparation. I may be scouting. I'm done scouting one game, but I'm working on the second game in the NCAA tournament, and you're working on both teams because you don't know who you're going to play. Sure. And first of all, you don't know if you're going to win or not. So there may not even be a second game. But, but it's also a fun time of the year. If you're a coach, a basketball coach, and you're a scouter like I am, you get the less sleep, and it is stressful, but it's the most fun time. I mean, when we made that run in the SEC tournament a couple years ago, when we made it to the championship game after playing on Wednesday, I mean, it was so much fun, and we were playing the night games. And Coach and I have a deal. If we're going to play in those tournaments and win, we're going to enjoy them. So we're not going from the game right back to the film room. We're going to go out. We're going to have dinner. We're going to enjoy the win, and then we're going to get working. So there were some late nights. There was some late nights and early mornings, and but those things are fun if you're doing it. And I know all the coaches in the different respective sports, and whether it's baseball, who plays a regional or a 3-game super regional series, or Omaha, and you get in the losers bracket, and it's we all have our unique thing to our own sport, but it's a fun time for sure for our staff.
I know this is a loaded question. The obvious answer is yes, but can you remember of any time that just working harder and scouting and it came to matter, it was kind of a decisive, it paid off in the end when you were just working harder than everybody else?
I don't know about working harder, but I do remember one game we were playing LSU, and we had the lead, and they had an out of bounds play, and by alignment, I had a really good idea what they were going to run, and so we were able to kind of scout that and tell our team during there was a dead ball. Maybe there was a review. I can't exactly remember why. It wasn't necessarily a timeout, but there's some type of review going on, and we had the team over there, and I'd seen them line up, and I was like, guys, if they line up like this, I'm pretty sure this is what they're going to run. Well, it's exactly what they ran. We were able to defend it. We win the game. Those types of things, it makes it pay off. because a lot of times, you do all that work and maybe that situation doesn't even manifest itself during the game or, but a lot of times, coaches have tendencies, like in every other sport. And, they may have a tendency of a first, and sometimes it's the first play of the game, because, sometimes you take away that very first play of the game that, that they kind of hang their hat on and, things like that. But that one particular situation was one that I will always remember in an end of the game situation that, from a scouting standpoint, it was like, oh, wait a minute.
For sure.
And I think that's kind of the football in me, like I played high school and college football, like formation, tendency, stuff like that. Like that's a big football thing, like in terms of their preparation. So,
I love scouting, and back in, when I was a high school coach, obviously in Arkansas, you have to win the 3 games in 3 days, and it's kind of a cluster. But you like for us, winning the 2 state championships, you're spending 3 straight days, you're spending 21 straight innings, just hoping for one, just niche one. Hey, I know exactly what's going on here, and it's like the greatest feeling ever when it works out, and when it doesn't work out, or you don't get any, you wasted, not wasted, but you spent. A lot of time. But I always tell people, the guys that love scouting, I feel like love the game. Like scouting is kind of easy to me whenever you just enjoy watching good players and you're kind of, you've got the best seat in the house to watch. And watch a lot of times great coaches too. Great coaches, great players. You're just a fan. And so scouting is a huge part of success. And I know you really enjoy that. So I wanted to let you speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's my favorite. Well, that and the player development side, but the in-season scouting stuff, yeah, it's you ask my family at home, like I have my computer with me at home every night, and they all know what I'm doing. And luckily technology allows me to bring my work home, because back in the day you had to stay at the office and do all that. But now technology is so good that you take that stuff home, and it's a fun deal. They know that I have a notebook that I keep at my house, that if I just have a game on, I may scribble down a play that I see if I'm watching a men's game or if I'm watching another women's game or something, that I always am like taking notes, even when there's like a random game on.
Sure.
I have a 12-year-old son, Will, who goes through scouting with me. Like he'll know as much about our scouting report on a team. Now he only does it for the good teams that we play, by the way, Chase. Yeah. He doesn't, in his mind, if it's not somebody good, he'll sit right there and watch film with me, and that's kind of fun to have him, and but yeah, it's definitely a part that, like you said, like for those of us this is why we do what we do. Yeah, it's time consuming, but I would never consider it hard work. Time consuming is one thing. It's not hard because I enjoy it. For
sure. So, obviously, we want you guys to have a great season. I wanted to spend a lot of time talking about the Razorbacks because people are, they love the Razorbacks, obviously, to put it nicely. There's a bunch of diehard fans out there. But I want to get into the Todd Schaefer story. Obviously, you have a very unique story, and, this took you to a lot of places. And I'm glad it brought you to Fayetteville for us to become what I consider friends, and appreciate you've done, everything you've done for me as a mentor. And obviously, us becoming friends through Landon's play. But born in Cincinnati, right? Ohio.
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned about playing college football. I know you've been at a couple of different stops. If you just kind of want to take us through your story, and maybe somebody who doesn't know your story, I think it's very interesting because obviously you're a hard worker and you're not afraid to get up and move and go to a different state, and obviously a very hard worker who loves the dirty work, as we call it sometimes, the scouting and the just stuff like that. So I want to give you a chance to kind of tell the world your story, because I think it's a very important one.
Well, I appreciate that. And don't remind my wife how many times we've moved. I think it's 9. I have to count on her because I don't want to count them. But
for sure.
It's I played like everybody, like a lot of people in high school. I was a good high school player, but at 5'9" and $160 or 70 back in those days, played in college a little bit, and my son will tell you that I only made it to 3rd string quarterback, so didn't get to see the field much.
Yeah.
But I tell people that this is where I developed like my coaching philosophies, was during my time on the scout team in college. Like I spent 3 years on the scout team, and it's really because I wanted to, because it was the way that I could help our team. I couldn't help our team on Saturdays when we played, but I could help them during the week, and I just learned a lot about coaching. I learned about preparation and scouting and details and all that from watching Morley, our defensive coordinator at that time. So, played a little small college ball and really enjoyed my time here, but was also a student assistant for women's basketball. I had a younger sister, so I was kind of coaching her and her AAU team. And that's kind of how I got into women's basketball, was because of my sister, Ann. And so like that kind of manifests itself, and and I made a lot of stops, and I look at my career path, and I look at it like it was definitely not linear. There wasn't like this just step by step rise to the top, so to speak, and there were some challenges along the way, and I look at my path as like a little bit old school. Like I paid the price, but because of the fact that I worked at whether it be Western Illinois and Macomb, a small Division I, and then I went to be a young head coach at Allen County Community College at 25 years old. I didn't know what I was doing.
For sure.
I thought I knew what I was doing, but I'm over there coaching against like women's basketball legends. Like I didn't know it at the time, but like Jim Littell, who just retired from Oklahoma State, and Craig Brookover and Jeff Tapman, and these are people that in women's basketball, if you follow like that, like these are Hall of Fame junior college coaches. I'm 25 years old coaching against them. And I'm sure back in those days, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't a better coach than them, because at 25, you don't even know what you don't know. And, then I went to a Division II in Memphis and built that program. They had never won. Again, people asking, like, why are you doing that? Like, 5 years there, and then went over to Arkansas Tech, and, Joe, Coach Foley had built that program, and they were like, what are you trying to do? Like, there's no way. And they had a couple down years, and, was able to get them back in the NCAA tournament. And like, that was a great experience. And then I went home to Cincinnati. I left Tech, which honestly, like my wife will tell you, we came so close to trying to buy this house in Russellville, this new build, and the builder ran out of money, and it just got delayed and delayed and delayed. Well, then I got an opportunity to go home to Cincinnati as associate head coach. Had we bought that house 2 weeks before that, we would have never left Russellville. But we go to Cincinnati. That was a good experience for a couple of years to be able to go to my hometown. And then I went back to high school, Chase. Like I went from the Big East. Cincinnati was at the Big East.
Sure.
That didn't work out, for a variety of reasons. And I went back to Greenbrier High School in Arkansas. And like that was a great experience. I still have dear friends at Greenbrier. In fact, I just talked to their AD the other day, Steve Wood. He's still a really good friend of mine. And then I had the chance to go back to college and went to Arkansas State. Brian Boyer there, and had 2 good years, and then got my first chance at the big time, and went to Ole Miss, and then went with Mike to Washington, and we had obviously a lot of the success out there, and then was fortunate enough to be able to come what I consider home. I mean, home for me with my family is Cincinnati, but my home. My adult home has been Arkansas.
For sure.
We've lived all over the state. My wife is from Pocahontas. 2 of my 3 boys were born somewhere in the state of Arkansas. So I think that from my perspective, the chance to come with Mike and certainly it's his home from Greenwood and graduated at the university, but it was also my adult home. But I think all of my career path and all the things in coaching, junior college, Division II, small Division I, mid-major Division I, and then obviously the Power 5 level, being in the SEC, the Pac-12, and then back to the SEC. I just have a unique set of circumstances. I mean, I've drove vans to games, and I've ridden private planes, and then everywhere in between.
For sure.
I've had lots of money in a budget, and I've had no money in a budget. I've been responsible for feeding my team, and I've had teams that are now able to eat at 4- and 5-star restaurants if that's what they want to do. So I think that just has just given me a unique career path. And, honestly, like the fondness and memories that I have for the places like Allen County and Christian Brothers, places that nobody's really ever heard of unless you've been there, those things are invaluable. But so was coaching Kelsey Plum at Washington and watch her be the number 1 pick in the draft. Those things were valuable too. And certainly my time here at Arkansas, this will be the start of my 6th year. This will be the longest, if I make it to game 1, this will be the longest tenure that I've ever had at a university. We spent 5 years at Christian Brothers University as the head coach in Division II, but we make it through this year. This would be year 6. So I think that speaks volumes to where I'm at in my life,
For sure.
but also the job that I have. And I tell people all the time, I've got like one of the best jobs in the country. I work at a fantastic university. We live in a great place. My kids are happy. My wife is happy. Working for Coach Neighbors is phenomenal. I believe in what we're doing. I believe in the university. I believe in our mission and in that. So it's easy for me to stay here now. It's not, people think it's hard. It's not hard. It's easy. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But just the path that I have is just, it's somewhat different. But I honestly, the good, the bad, I wouldn't trade any of it, because it's helped me be, who I am, today. And I think I'm starting year 28. So, I think this is season number 28.
Well, you talked about being at Greenbrier. Was that humbling for you, and did that make you realize obviously you went right back to college? At what point at Greenbrier did you know that you missed the
well, honestly, it wasn't a matter of like missing the college level as much. The high school experience was phenomenal, because here's what you realize, and you being a former high school coach, those kids go home to dinner every night with their families.
For sure.
In college, they don't. So it's like the difference in having a kid that goes home every night for dinner and tells their mom and dad everything, to coaching them in college where they don't tell their mom and dad anything. Yeah, it's like the difference in day and night. But boy, I really reconnected with myself from a teaching standpoint, because you go back to the high school level and like you're going, okay, like you really got to break these things down, and you really got to focus on player development, and you really got to understand them emotionally, because they're even younger than the ones that, that I had been coaching for. I think I was 16 years, but it was either 14 or 16 before I went back to Greenbrier. But, and then you throw the whole teaching thing in there. Like I had to get my teaching license. So like I'm having to go back to school and through the non-traditional program. So like there was that was involved, and so it was good. And I wasn't necessarily looking to go back. The opportunity to work at Arkansas State and to work for a friend of mine and Brian Boyer at the time was kind of too good to pass up. But just love Greenbrier. I mean, like Randy Tribble's the football coach there. Like he's as good a coach as I've ever been around. I don't care where I've coached. Like that guy can coach. He's, like there are just things there. The baseball coach there at the time was Terry May. You talk about like a phenomenal person. Still a good friend today is Jeff Chick Hart. Jeff played minor league baseball. He played at UCA, played minor league baseball. He comes and watches the boys play, my boys play. Anytime he's got a chance to either come up here or we come down there in that area. So just like a cool experience though. So, but yeah, humbling, and then just, it just made me a better coach.
For sure. Well, you find yourself sometimes in situations like that, and you remember, what's going on. So another thing I wanted to talk about, obviously you have a couple sons. Landon is a 10th grader at Fayetteville High School. Very, very, very phenomenal young man, and just getting to talk to Landon, just a big-time leader at his age, which I'm attesting comes to hanging out with Dad and the athletic program growing up. But great player. How was it as a father who obviously loves his son but recruits for a living, getting to watch some of the recruiting through Landon? And I don't know, who all he visited or whatever. I know there was other schools involved for sure, but how was that? Yeah. It's a dirty game, obviously, especially on the baseball side. So how was that? And did you, obviously you have experience in it. How much of it did you know wasn't accurate, or, was just trying to get a 15-year-old kid to say yes?
It was surreal. It was weird. The first couple of calls we had with coaches or Zooms or whatever, like it was weird being on the father side of it. I think that my mere presence on a Zoom call or a phone call, because the coaches would do their research, they knew what I did for a living. I do think it kept his process more authentic. I think they probably realized that maybe their normal pitch wasn't going to be, the right thing to do. Sure. But it was interesting. And we, my wife and I, my wife she's in her college Hall of Fame for basketball. So like, she's had her own career. I've had mine. We let him go through his process. We certainly guided him. We certainly helped him develop the things that he wanted to know and questions. But it was interesting sitting on those calls and making those visits with him, and kind of being a part of going on some campuses as a dad. Like, but yet the coach never leaves you. Like, I don't care as much as I try. You just look at things different. Like, I can't watch a game as a dad. Like, it's just like I try to, but it's like there's still that, we could have done this or that, or or like this poor kid's struggling, and like and you can see something, like you see like this kid is out there struggling. So the recruitment was the same way. It was like we told him this was our rule, Chase. Okay. We're going to help you. We're going to guide you. We're going to make sure that you get all the information that you need. Okay. But it's going to be your decision on where you want to go. But we reserve the right to tell you where you're not going to go. That was our deal with him. That was our deal with him. And there was one school that we told him you're not going to, and I won't share who that's with, but I will share with you. I tried to get him to consider Notre Dame. And he was like, "Oh no, it's way too cold up there." Yeah. Like, so I didn't have any influence on being able to get him to consider a school. And I said, "Okay, that's fine. Like, I get it. You're a baseball player. You don't want to be cold if you don't have to." And he had plenty of opportunities to stay, down here in the South where it's a little warmer. So again, we used my experience and my wife's experience to kind of help him guide through that and facilitate that process. But I kind of sat back and I tried not to say too much because I wanted him to be able to ask those questions and develop those relationships and do more of the talking. For sure. But I was there. I was available, and it was kind of fun. Didn't last very long. For sure. But the funny thing is, like, everybody thinks, oh, well, you coach at Arkansas and you guys live in Fayetteville and whatever. Of course he's going to Arkansas. Like, I'm telling you, like, that was the opposite thing he was talking about doing. Like, he told everybody, like, I remember early in that summer, like, people, we'd be out at events and, hey, give me your top 5 schools. And like, he would never mention Arkansas. For sure. And like these guys would come up to me and go, hey man, I asked Landon what his top 5 was. And he told me it was, I don't even know the schools at the top, but it was never Arkansas. And I was like, he's dead set on going away from home. Like, he just, like, he was a 14 or 15-year-old, kid. Like, he thought he knew, but then as the recruiting started and he now started to be educated on the programs and educated on what was going on, and he got to meet coaches and go to camp at places and do the things that he had to do in order to make his decision, it quickly became apparent to him that this was the place for him. But like, it didn't start like that. It was so funny because, people just assume, right? Because, you live there, I coach there. Like, that's not how that went down. And,
that's a credit to Nate and Coach Van Horn.
Well, I was about to say that it's a credit to our baseball coaching staff, is they did not take him for granted as a recruit. Just because we live in Fayetteville and just because I coach at the university in another sport, like, they never treated him like any differently than they would a kid that they were recruiting from, Alabama or Ohio or anywhere else for that matter. So, and because of that, he built a relationship with those guys, and, I just love their program so much that it's very old school. Like, Lisa and I, my wife and I, we think we raise our kids in a little bit of an old school kind of way. For sure. And Landon just loved the meat and potatoes, it's cut and dry over there with Coach Van Horn. I mean, we're here to work. We're going to have fun along the way because we're going to be good at what we do. Like, that's going to be the fun in it. And for sure. And they talked to him about player development and like, it was a connection that they made with him. And it turned out to be, like, honestly, it wasn't a very hard decision, even though he had lots of choices. For sure. Once he started to learn, it was like, in fact, we kind of like made him think about it just a little bit longer. Like, he kind of wanted to commit even earlier than he did. And he was already early, but we were just like, hey, and I took him to a couple of other places to go to camp and, like, just to, like, make sure that, like, for sure. Because he had kind of come 180 degrees, from I'm going away and I'm not going to go to Arkansas. Not that I'm not. He just wanted to go away. For sure. Okay.
Be away from mom and dad. It's okay to say.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. No, it wasn't. He didn't want. But then he was like, oh man, I love the coaches. I love, So, but yeah. So it was. it was a unique experience.
So one other thing I want to ask you about his recruiting. So
yeah,
John Russo's a great friend of mine. He was the head coach at Hofstra, and he played for Coach Smart. So the story goes, when Coach Smart was the head coach at Troy, he had a very, very talented son, catcher, really good player, 4-year starter or 3-year, whatever, before he got drafted. So he goes on these visits, and he goes to Alabama, and he goes to Auburn. I think that's how the story goes. And he commits to Troy, like, immediately. So they go, well, you took your 5 visits. Like, why? And they say, Coach Smart was like, well, I wanted to see what other coaches, like, what their recruiting pitch was. Like, I wanted to learn so I could make my recruiting pitches better when we have people come in. So what did you learn, or did you take any away from, those are some of the best coaches. Mm-hmm. And I know some of the schools you visited and talked to. Those are some of the best in their profession. Like, so did you learn anything from that from a recruiting side? And also, it's loaded here, because did you ever have to stop and think, like, hey, he's still 15 years old? Like, so is there any compassion, like, when you do it on your level to go? Well,
first of all, I still do that, because he's 16 now, and I still do that. I go, wait a minute, we're talking to who about what?
Yeah,
Stop. Yeah. Like, so yes, no, I did learn. I learned a couple things. I learned that there is very little comparison between women's basketball recruiting and the timeline and the process than baseball recruiting. And I'll give you an example. So, like, in our world, like, watching a kid play in the summer, like, maybe like all their games,
for sure,
is a big deal. It's kind of how you can kind of prove to a kid, like, that you're important to us. So, like, we'll identify certain players and, like, we'll go watch them a bunch, right? And because we're trying to make that family and make that kid know that they're important. So I remember Landon was getting ready to go to the USA baseball team event. In that particular year, they were going to the one in Phoenix. And I remember all of the SEC schools that were recruiting him were like, hey, hey, good luck out there in Phoenix. And, hey, we'll see you when you come back to World Woodbat in Hoover. None of them went to watch him out there. Like, there wasn't – now, there was a bunch of Pac-12 schools out there, West Coast. There was 0 SEC schools at this big event, right? Like, so I thought, well, this is funny, because in our world of women's basketball, like, oh, gosh, we would have been there, right? It's a big event. So I learned that there's differences in the sports, and obviously the recruiting calendars and that. But, I learned quite a bit, and I'll leave the staff's name out of this, but there was a particular staff that I thought did a really, really good job, and they just really highlighted, like, each of their coaches' strengths. And it was a school that he ended up not picking, by the way. Yeah. But I just felt like the way they went about it, and at the time they were building a program. Like, so having been through that before, I was, like, particularly paying attention to see, because they didn't have winning to sell at that time.
For sure.
They couldn't sell winning because they hadn't started winning yet. So I was particularly impressed and took some nuggets of the things that they highlighted about their program at the time, about their coaching staff, and then, like, how they allowed each of their coaches to establish, like, their own relationship, with our family, and particularly with Landon, and how they kind of went about that. So that was one thing that, like, really, kind of stuck out. And then, like, particularly for Arkansas, it's so great. It's so funny. Coach Van Horn is so successful, as everybody that listens to this knows, and he's got a great staff. They never once talk about the number of draft picks they have, the number of times they've been to Omaha. Like, they never mentioned that stuff. So, like, in a world of today, we live on social media and promotion and all that. They just stuck to the authentic, like, way that they do things every day there. So their recruitment was, like, their recruitment message, I guess, was in line with who they are every day. Like, there wasn't, like, this, hey, this is who I am on social media, or this is who I am every day. So, like, the other staff that I learned from was actually an SEC school too, like, that hadn't won. Like, I learned that from them and how they did. And then, of course, with the Arkansas staff, what I was really impressed with them was the fact that, like, they just stayed true to who they were. Like, hey, this is who we are. This is the work that gets put in. This is the layout. And I was like, but they never mentioned the success. Coach Van Horn never one time said, I've been to the College World Series X amount of times, whatever that number is. Never.
And unfortunately, in recruiting, people are not very honest. Like, it's very,
no.
very,
no,
you know.
no. Nate Thompson did not tell Landon or me or his mom like one time how many guys that he's hit with that have gotten drafted or like or how many.
Yeah.
Matt Hobbs never once mentioned that. I've had never one time. It was all about the process that they have, the vision they have for Landon, and so really staying true, even though they have a ton of success, by the way, that they could talk about, and Coach Van Horn, and you've heard him say this, I've heard him say this publicly, so I don't feel bad about saying this. Like, they have all these great facilities, right? They do not want the focus to be on those facilities. They want the focus to be on the blue collar work ethic, the player development, the time that they spend on the field, developing, getting better. Like, even though they have like all these bells and whistles, and they still want it to be like, yes, we have all this stuff, but that's not who we are.
For sure.
So I kind of learned that. I thought that was great because like we at the University of Arkansas, we all got nice stuff, right? I mean, we've all been blessed to have resources and facilities and that, but that building, that new building, that indoor facility, the new one, the right field one, like whatever they might have does not define like who they are.
For sure.
And that's, to me, that was
a
great message.
He played there, and I mean, it was obviously not near as nice. And
No.
I mean, he's kind of built that thing and stuff. So I don't, Coach Van Horn or Nate or Matt, if you guys see this, obviously we love you guys and wish you guys a lot of luck this year too. So we'll wrap this thing up. I know this is the most important question to me, and probably one that'll be hard for you to answer. Maybe not the most important, but the most interesting to me. Who's the best player you've ever scouted?
Oh. The best player I ever scouted. That's an interesting. I'm going to probably have to tell you.
There's been a lot of good ones now in 26 years.
Well, that's the problem. And in the old Big East, like when I was at Cincinnati, like that was UConn and Rutgers and Notre Dame, and like it was like they were really good players that. But I'll tell you, probably the most. Well, I'm going to give you two names.
Okay.
And I'm going to keep it recent here to Arkansas. Asia Wilson was a nightmare to scout, and although she had tendencies that you tried to like, she just found a way to like get to her tendencies, and you couldn't do anything about it. And I still watch her today, like playing professional basketball, and I'm going, well, okay, they can't stop her doing what she does well either. But there was a player at Texas A&M named Kennedy Carter, who was a high draft choice and played for Coach Blair down there. And she was such an amazing player. And she had so many physical talents that it was like, okay. And we played them a bunch during her time there while we were here. And like, we would try all these like different things with her. And it was like, well, she beat every coverage we ever gave her. Like it was crazy. Like it was like, she did all these things and you're scouting her and you're going, but none of these things work because she was such a good player. And it became, because you think as a scouter, you think, this is going to work.
Yeah.
Like I have no, and then that doesn't work. And then like the next time you play her, it was like, okay, well, this is going to work. Okay, well, that didn't work either. And it's like, well, but there's been quite a few, along the way. But
there ever been anybody you passed on that ended up like wanting to play for you at whatever school and ended up going on, and you look back and go, hey, really messed that one up?
I'm sure there's probably plenty of those, but probably a one. I think for us, for me particularly, it's probably just more kids that we missed on that maybe we didn't like misevaluate, but like we just didn't get. But yeah, there's those ones that like that you kind of thought you were going to get her and you didn't, and it was like, daggone it, like those things, because honestly here, Chase, like we kind of pride ourselves in, like Michaela Daniels, our starting point guard, not a top 100 kid. Samara Spencer, our other point guard, not a top 100 kid. Like we kind of pride ourselves on the evaluation portion of things, that we kind of out evaluate people, which is really hard to do in basketball, by the way. Like, because most of the time females athletes, they're they're maybe not all the way grown, but like a boy may mature like well after his recruitment.
sure.
You know, like he may grow 5 inches, he may put on 40 pounds, like whatever the case might be. But so it's hard to like really out evaluate people in our sport, but we kind of take a pride in that here. But yeah, there's always players that like you kind of miss on, and you went, you know, I wish we could have gotten that kid.
Sure.
Like, you know, she would have been a good fit here because maybe it didn't work out at another school, like the same way that we would have hoped that it would have worked out. But
well, there's something to be said about getting the right players, you know, because sometimes the right player is more
so
important,
important.
you know, for the fit.
So important. It's like anything else in business. You have to have the right people, and you have to have talented people now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, talent and ability and skill set is important, but you have to have the right people that fit the culture that you're trying to build, whatever that culture is.
Sure.
And, you know, that's the thing that we try not to deviate from here is that, you know, we try not to deviate from the type of culture that we've built. And if we can recruit to that culture with talented people, well, then the results will take care of themselves.
Sure.
But so many times it's easy to maybe go, well, I know this kid doesn't fit, but she's really talented. Yeah, I think that's where coaches can get themselves in a little bit of trouble with, and then all of a sudden they don't have a cohesive locker room. You know, they don't have the same culture that they had, and
sure.
you kind of look at a roster and go, well, the roster's really talented, but they're not performing like maybe they did a couple of years ago. Well, that's maybe because they changed something internally. So, you know, that's a challenge all of us coaches have, you know, is to try to find really talented kids that have, you know, that have the values, so to speak, that your locker room does.
For sure.
And try to recruit to that. But
Well,
yeah, you know,
unfortunately,
it's
that locker room's not good. It's not going to be good on Thursdays and Sundays.
Never going to be good, and it's not, and more like it's not going to be good, but it's not going to be any fun either. Like,
correct.
It's not. It's not going to be fun for the players. It's not going to be fun for the coaches. So we try to be mindful of that. And this is where Coach Neighbors is such a phenomenal coach in that way, is that he keeps a level head about that stuff. Like, you know, like he keeps a level head about that type of thing. And, you know, and if we have what he calls a Space Jam game where we just stink one night and we're bad, like we're not going to overreact to a night that, you know, because you're going to have those nights, right?
Sure.
You know, and you're in your world of baseball, like you're going to have that night that you get beat 12 to 1.
Oh,
like it just, yeah, it's going to happen. So like, let's not overreact to a Space Jam game, for instance, and you know, let's not overreact to some kid that we don't think fits, but the recruiting services, right, tell us that we're supposed to be recruiting. Is
it hard when that kid's local or in-state or?
Well, yes, it is, Chase. It's particularly hard because everybody, like you said, is passionate about Arkansas sports, particularly, and then in our sport and women's basketball, it is making sure that a local kid or an in-state kid, you know, is the right fit. Because sometimes it's not about being good enough. Sometimes it's just about being the right fit and at the right time. And like, look, and I'll use your sport. Like, if you've already got 2 center fielders, and then like in the next recruiting class, there's this great center fielder, right? That maybe they can't play anywhere else. And
sure.
let's use catcher because it's probably a better deal. They don't play anywhere else. Well, that third catcher might be a really, really good player, but like there's just no room for that player here. And if I bring him here, he's going to be unhappy because he's not going to play. And it's not because he's not good. It's just because it's not a great time on our roster. So like that whole roster management thing, like is a real deal. And sometimes fans and high school coaches and summer coaches, like they don't always understand that, like, it's not that the kid's not good. It's not that we don't want her. It's just that it's the wrong fit at the wrong time. And so sometimes you have to pass on a kid, you know, because of that. And
sometimes when you take that third catcher, you end up being a liar to the first 2, which is even worse.
It's what we try not to do, which is recruit on top of the kids that are already here. It just, for us, the way we've built our program and the way that Naves runs our program, like that's not what we do. It's okay that that's what somebody else in our sport does, but it's just not what we do. And like you said, you've made commitments and you're sitting there going, hey, we're going to develop this kid who's already here, you know. But then on the other side, we owe it to ourselves to make sure we have a roster that has enough talent. So like there's a real juggling act to that roster management thing of like, yeah. So it
One
is
of the worst to
difficult.
me is like, I pride myself on being honest and transparent. We've had
Mhm.
these talks before, but like you're honest to this person at the time and you mean it, and you're honest to this person and that's it. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you didn't lie 6 months ago. It just, the honesty changes and it sucks sometimes.
It does. It does. And I remind everybody, like what you do, what we do, what these players are trying to do is hard.
For sure.
It's really hard.
If you believe in treating people right, it's almost
hard.
unrealistic.
It's hard. So you're going to make mistakes. Circumstances change, timing changes. A kid doesn't develop like you thought he or she was going to. You get into that junior year and it just didn't work, and then so then you have to kind of adjust. You have to adjust your plan, and it's difficult. And so we try to remind players in the recruitment process all the time that it's going to be hard when you get here. If you understand that and embrace that, you have a better chance at overcoming that.
And being successful.
And it's hard. And the easiest thing for me to do as an assistant coach, is to not understand it, that 3 feet to my left, that chair that's right to my left in a game that Mike sits in, that's a completely different chair than I sit in. It's real easy to have an opinion from my chair. So I try really, 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 really hard. And I think I do this well most of the time. If I have an opinion about something, I try to have a solution for something. I try not to go to him with a problem or a hey, we need to do this without a plan, because I think it's unfair. And having been a head coach at the lower levels before, I think helps me in this. It's really hard to tell somebody that's the ultimate decision maker, hey, we need to do something a different way, without providing he or she with some evidence and some research, of a why or a how. Okay, well, why are we going to do this? Yes, and I try to because again, it's super unfair, because that person is the one that ultimately has to take in all the information and make a decision. So whether that be on a recruit, or whether that be on playing time, or whether that be on a play call, or it's ultimately that person's responsibility. So I try to value the fact that although Mike confides in me quite a bit, I'm still not the head coach. Sure. I'm still not that. And so those decisions, I try to view, from his chair, and that's a different chair. Oh, so
we appreciate everything Mike does as well for everybody.
Oh, it's a good situation.
Let's wrap this up. We end every show, because I know you got a lot to do. I think you got stuff in a little bit. We wrap up every show with what I call 5 moments of truth. And moment, question, however you want to word it. But this is a very important question to me, because I consider you very successful. I consider a lot of my friends to be very successful. So I think this is important to ask any successful person. What's the best advice you've ever received, and who gave it to you?
Oh, wow. Well, I've gotten a lot of good advice over the years. Probably from a coaching standpoint, and you'll kind of laugh at this, and it sticks to me. So one of my dad's friends was a high school coach back in when they found out that I was going to get into coaching and not go to law school, which was the plan, by the way. But was that you have to understand that you're getting into a profession. There are two types of coaches: those that have been fired or those that are going to be fired. So just understand that the profession itself is volatile.
For sure.
And this was I don't know, 30 years ago, right? Well, look at where we are today with the volatility of coaches, particularly. So that was kind of from a profession standpoint, that still rings true today, that you have to really stay mindful of the fact that you have to stay in the moment. And his point wasn't that his point was you have to just stay in the moment. You can't get caught up, and sometimes things aren't going to work.
For sure.
And you have to learn from those things, because if you get stuck on those things, then you're going to be one of those coaches that doesn't have a job any longer because you get stuck. So you have to learn from the mistakes that you make. And that was kind of his whole point to like the two types of coaches. You know, and then so that was probably as a young person, the thing that kind of just stuck with me, you know, along the way to make sure that I, even at year 28, and I'll be 50 years old here in a couple months, like that I ensure that I'm continually trying to learn and to develop myself so that I don't get stuck.
For sure.
And then the other thing that I was told by you know, actually Coach Blair told me this, Gary Blair, you know, the former coach here at Arkansas, just retired from A&M, going in our Hall of Honor tomorrow night, actually at Arkansas, that, you know, don't get bitter towards the profession as you're trying to like move up. Like, and he's got a saying, and Mike uses this saying, and I don't think it's like a unique saying to Coach Blair, but like you make big time where you're at. So like when I was a coach at a junior college, or I was a coach at a Division II school, like to me, like that was big time where I was at. Like like that was the most important thing that was going on. So because of that, our players felt that. But as you're trying to like work up the ladder, like in the coaching profession or in the business, and you start in the mailroom, or like, you know, you've got to make where you're at, like that's got to be big time. Like you have to have that mentality that like where you're currently at is like the biggest level of like the most important, and then you just do that job like to the best of your ability, and then everything else like will take care of itself. And then like you don't become like you don't lose focus on like what's next.
For sure. Because
you're just consumed with what's now, because it's like, no, there's nothing better than right now being the associate head coach at the University of Arkansas. You know, if something else comes my way down the road, fine, but it's going to be a product of, you know, that thing. And Coach Blair was always such a good mentor. I mean, obviously him and Coach Neighbors are extremely close, and I don't have that type of relationship with Coach Blair, but like I have a pretty good one. And I just remember him saying that. And actually, I just gave that advice, Chase. It's so funny. Amber Ramirez, who was a player here, great player here, she just got into the coaching profession. And when she told me that she had gotten a coaching job, I was like, awesome. I said, where are you going? And she said, I'm going to the University of Illinois, Springfield. And I said, that's a Division II school, right? And she was like, yeah, I'm really fired up. I said, so I reused Coach's advice to me, and I told her where I got it from. And I told her it wasn't unique to him, but like having played first at TCU and then she transferred to us at Arkansas, you know, going to a Division II school could be the best thing that ever happened to her. For sure. And I continue to reiterate that hey, make that big time. Like you make that big time, you know, like, and so like to answer your question in a different way, like I've even now, I must be getting old if I'm starting to give people advice, right? Like that was something that I just told Amber the other day, and I kind of remind her of that in a different way all the time. So anyhow, I hope that's
moment number 2. Who's been your biggest mentor, either personally or professionally, and somebody that you owe a lot to?
Well, boy, that's a long list. You know, I will tell you that obviously family, my dad, my mom before she passed, like those people are all important. My wife now, like those people are all important. But from a professional standpoint, there were 2 people that when I was younger, that still do stuff for me today, but certainly when I was 25, 30 years old, there's a guy named Toby McCammon. Toby was a junior college coach in Kansas, one of the most successful coaches that nobody's ever heard of type person. You know, him and I, he really mentored me from an X's and O's and coaching standpoint. Like he was a phenomenal coach. To this day, I tell people he's the best coach. He's actually just retired from coaching at Greenbrier. He had actually come to Greenbrier with me. He'd gotten out of college coaching, but he was somebody that like late nights, man, me and him were up there X's and O and just, I mean, we go visit each other. So like he was a tremendous influence on the basketball side of it. Kind of professionally, Tom Collin. Tom was former Lady Razorback coach. I met Tom when he was an assistant at Purdue, I believe, and like I was like super young. I was coaching like club basketball, AAU, whatever you want to say. And Tom has just always been. He wasn't a guy that I talked to every day, but like he was the guy that always just shared his story, his wisdom. He's a super person. He's retired now. You'll get a kick out of this. He lives down in the Marietta area.
Okay.
He drives up to Lake Point, or he drove up to Lake Point when Landon was playing there. He sat there all day and watched Landon like it was his own kid. Yeah. Like he's got his own kid. Like, but him and I have shared, and you know, and he generationally in coaching, he's kind of a generation ahead of me. You know, Tom's now retired. You know, so like,
sure.
But he was somebody that always just seemingly had the right thing to say. To an immature kid who he probably saw something in that, you know, as you're forging your path at that age where, you know, you're full of fires. Oh, yeah. You know, you're just, you know, he was always somebody that just always kind of had something like the right thing to say at the right time for a young, you know, person, passionate, overly passionate at time person. So I would tell you that those two guys, one, some of our people, obviously Tom was a Razorback coach here, Lady Razorback coach a few years ago. And, you know, but he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, you know, in women's basketball. And then Toby, who like many of us have never heard of, many of y'all, but those two people. Yeah. Yep.
It's amazing how the people that people never hear of touch the people that everybody hears. You know what I mean? Like there's always that weird, like, you know, that we all love dearly and formed us to be who we are. Moment 3 is if Coach came to you tomorrow and said, who's this up-and-coming coach that, you know, we need we got a spot. Like, who's the one up-and-coming in your profession that, you know, gets your stamp that the world needs to know about? If, you know, you were a head coach tomorrow and you had to hire somebody, who would be your person?
Jalen Powell. So Jalen Powell, JP, she was a high school player in New York City that I got to know through recruiting and then through working with Coach Insel at Ole Miss. We hired Jalen at Ole Miss as a manager. And she wasn't good enough to play college basketball at that level, but she wanted to be. Her dad is one of the elite skill development guys in New York. And we hired Jalen. She was our manager there. Well, when we got here, we needed a GA. And he was like, hey, he goes, get us a GA that you can use on the court, whatever. So we hired her here. She did a great job for us here. And then she actually works at Ohio State now. So one of my best friends is the head coach at Ohio State. And Jalen's a very young coach, and he was kind of looking for somebody younger. And but Jalen Powell probably is the young coach that, like, I just think I've known her since high school. I think she's going to do – she already is doing great. I mean, she's an assistant at Ohio State. But down the road, I think people are going to know her name, if that makes any sense.
We talked about Tom and the mentors, and we talked about JP and the up-and-coming. Obviously, there's a huge age difference and generational difference between those three people. Give me the trait, the one trait or the traits that those three have that just make them so different and so loving. And if somebody's watching this, the one thing that makes them stand out, the quality that you need as you're coming through this profession.
They're authentic. That's the first word that comes to my mind on those people. Like, they're just authentic people. And because of that, like, they forge relationships that are authentic. And in today's world, that is really hard to do, in my opinion.
Correct.
So I would tell you that that's the word that, you know, whether that's, you know, Coach Colin, Toby McCammon, Jalen Powell, the people that are on our staff here, you know, they are authentic people. First and foremost,
which is hard to find and obviously very important. So it's amazing how we forget that being authentic is so, like, you have to remind people that, hey, it's a good trait to have. But that's where we're at today. Moment 4, personal goals or professional goals for you the rest of this year and going forward into 2023.
It's funny. It's a good question. If you would ask me that question 5 years ago, I would have had a different answer. My professional goals is just to continue to be the best assistant coach here that I can be, and just provide for our staff, Coach Neighbors, and most importantly, our players. Like that, literally, I don't want to become, you know, stuck in what I'm doing to the point where I don't continue to improve. I don't to continue to provide value, you know, to this program, to Coach Neighbors, to our players, to our staff. like honestly, for us to move the program forward, for us to continue to have success, to have more success in the postseason, which we want to do, I have to like keep myself motivated and on that. People always ask me about being a head coach. I have been a head,
For sure.
like that. It's not as important to me anymore as it used to be. But I'm not telling you, like at some point in time, if our program's success leads some athletic director to call me and and have interest in me to be the head coach of their program, but it's no longer like a goal of mine.
Sure.
5 years ago, it would have absolutely, if you would have asked me that question. But now, my life has changed. My job is great.
For sure.
Well, so
fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, you have an assistant job that is better than the majority of head coaching jobs out there. So
I find that out every year, by the way.
Correct.
I don't find that out. I'm reminded of that every year.
You got it made right now. There's nowhere to go but down, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, you're right. So I just try to stay right here.
The last question, I started this thing to be a part of change, and I want to be a part of change. I want to motivate. I want to inspire. I just want to be a part of good as I get older. So this is kind of an open-ended. You can answer it however you want. But with the world the way it is today, we've had to talk about, how being authentic is important and just being honest, like, in Landon's recruitment. Just kind of speak on where we're at today and how we all can be a part of the change, and maybe personally or professionally, what you see every day that, just get this place back to where it needs to be.
I'm just reminded of something daily, that whether you're talking about life, whether you're talking about sports, whether you're talking about business, religion, leadership, everything is hard to do it right. And oftentimes when we run into hard, this is when we as people, as coaches, as players, like we try to circumvent hard. Like we look for the quick fix. We look for the escape route. We look for the alternative. And what my kind of thinking is now at almost 50 years old and a long time in this profession and being a husband and a father, like that stuff's hard, man.
Sure.
It's hard to do all of those things. So I think it's important in order to understand the challenges that we have in our life, and whether that's race relations, or whether that's coaching, or whether that's trying to be a better person, a better Christian, a better basketball player, a better whatever, a better father, a better husband. You have to accept the fact that it's hard, and you're going to have to do hard things, and you're going to have to make hard choices. And because of that, I think that's probably the thing that we as humans, like, it's easy for us to try to circumvent hard.
Sure.
So my challenge every day is to do the hard things well. Don't shy away from the hard things, whether it's a hard conversation, whether it's a hard lesson to learn, whether it's a hard, whatever it might be. And I think when I try to mentor young people, they're too smart. Stop BSing like these young kids, like, and trying to be honest with them, be authentic with them. Let them know, hey, it's going to be hard, but this is how we're going to get through it. This is how we're going to do it. And I think that would probably be my advice / like, not that it's a solution to anything, but I think avoiding hard gets us in a lot of problems.
For sure.
In life. And so accepting that, and I think is an important part of, like, trying to be the person that you want to be, trying to be the ball player you want to be, trying to be the husband you want to be. Let's embrace hard. Let's do hard together. Let's figure it out. Let's not avoid life. It's, let's not avoid the hard stuff.
Sure.
Let's not try to find the quick answer. So I think that would be the thing for me.
Coach, I appreciate it.
One.
It's it's been a great interview. As I'm new into this and kind of just starting, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I'm just kind of, I had 0 questions other than the last 5 written down, and I feel like I could still ask another 20. So I think that's a testament to you and you just wanting to share your story. And again, I think I've been blessed with such great friends, and I consider you a friend. I'm very thankful for everything you've done for me in our conversations, and just kind of learning from you and you being a mentor without even trying. But unfortunately, I know you got to get to practice. So I'm going to wrap this thing up. I'm going to get you out of here. I just want to
Awesome.
say I appreciate everything you do for the state and everything you've done for me. We love you guys, man. We hope you have a great spring. If I don't talk to you very much in between then, if I can ever do anything for you, please let me know.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything that you do, continue to do. It's a great friendship, great partnership, and we look forward to, many years to come with you. Thanks a lot, Chase.
I appreciate
you.
Thank you.
He conducted himself like a knucklehead on a couple of occasions.